Hey guys, thank you for watching The Naturalist Capitalist. I'm your host, Reed Coverdale, and I've got a special guest on the show, Angela McArdle, who is the LP chair for Los Angeles County in California, and she's running to be the chair of the National Party for 2022. How's it going, Angela?
Hey, it's going great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty good friends with David Feit, and I watched the episode he did with you, and I thought that was a really interesting conversation. And something I noticed is we both come from the same sort of background. It seems like almost everyone I talk to in the liberty movement comes from the left, but I come from the right. So I find it interesting when I meet other libertarians who come from the right. So do you want to just give us a little bit of background on how you went from the right to becoming a libertarian?
Sure. I mean, I grew up in a traditional conservative Christian home in the South, which to me, I thought was, pretty typical. And I moved to California as a teenager and just, widened my social circle and met someone, and we had a conversation just about politics in general as a 17-year-old,
Right.
And I was explaining, oh, well, I'm a conservative, and obviously the backdrop is that now I've moved to California, and all of a sudden being a conservative isn't the norm, and it's, kind of like cringy and people don't like it. And I'm like, but, I don't care about, weed. I don't think my friends should go to jail because they smoked weed. And I don't really care about gay marriage. I don't care if gay people want to get married. That seems like, why wouldn't conservatives want that anyway? And he said, oh, well, you sound more like a libertarian than a Republican. And I thought, oh, okay, well, if that's what it's called, sure, I'm a libertarian. It wasn't anything particularly profound, I guess, except, looking back on it, I'm like, wow, that really did change the trajectory of my life. But it just seemed like an innocuous, innocent conversation that didn't have much weight to it at the time. But I just considered myself a libertarian, and I would usually vote L when I saw one. I didn't look into it much, except, occasionally seeing something libertarian on the internet or hearing someone talk about it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's me too. But then I read The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffith, and that imploded my worldview. That book is about the Federal Reserve, and I've always had an interest in politics and finance and banking, and even though I'm actually not that financially savvy, I think, compared to people that I run in circles with, like Mark Skousen, financial economists and people like that. I'm not on their level, but I've had an interest in it. So that really awakened me to the evil of central planning. And then once I became aware of the Ron Paul revolution, presidential campaigns, that really brought it home. I thought, wow, I'm not the only one who's freaked out about the federal government. There's a broad liberty movement, and I could get involved in it, and I could meet other people, and wow, maybe we could make a change. So that was sort of my journey to libertarianism, just generally being aware of it, becoming acutely aware of the problem, and realizing that there are a whole lot of people who share the same concerns.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually realized, I don't know if I'd say the evil at the time, but the inefficiency and stupidity of central planning through working on power lines, because we were contractors and we were working for utilities in New Hampshire. And there were a few different utilities. There was a little co-op, and then there were some municipalities, and then there was this big utility. I'm going to keep names out of it, just just to be safe. But there's this utility that runs most of New Hampshire and most of New England, and everything is a top-down approval process. The people who are making the decisions are never out in the field. They don't know. They don't even know what the parts that they're ordering are. They don't know what they look like. They don't know what they do. the engineers sometimes never showed up on the job site to look at anything. They just have their blueprints, and then you were just supposed to go figure it out. And then when there was a storm and we were trying to repair stuff, put the lines back up, put new poles in, it was just a disaster because, like I said, that top-down approval process, trying to get anything done was just a nightmare because it had to go up so many levels. And you couldn't just go fix stuff that you knew was broken. You had to, there's this bureaucracy that was in charge of everything. And then they started piling on all these excessive regulations that were there to supposedly like protect the environment or protect the workers. But a lot of the regulations to protect the environment, they actually made it worse because you had to, you had to add all these extra variables in. You had to burn more fuel. You were putting mats in the swamps that were supposed to keep you initially from sinking into the swamp, but then the definition of a swamp got expanded so much. You were, you were putting these mats on dry ground for miles, so you're paying for all the fuel, you're burning all that diesel. And then you have this 16-foot wide mat road going for miles that sits there for a few weeks, kills everything that's on top of, and then the regulations to make people safer. In my opinion, it got so bad, they were just making people dumb. They weren't really saving anyone. Someone would make some arbitrary mistake and then you have a law to replace it. And that was really like what brought me to the realization that centralized planning and really like one size fits all solutions are just a joke. They don't work for everyone.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's what a lot of people who work in government-run industries say once they've kind of got like an awakening and they're not so like concerned about, I guess, holding on to their bureaucratic jobs if they're in like a bureaucratic level, is that central planning, it almost starts to seem cartoonish at a certain level once you start to figure things out. Memos, everything's got to be a memo, and then the people writing the memos have no idea what they're writing a memo about, but they're just literally just typing things into the computer. And my job is to just type things about the things that you do. And do you have any idea what I do? No. I just, I type things. It's grossly inefficient. I don't know. I guess I see how people want to hold on to their jobs though. So like it breeds layer upon layer of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
I want to see something just collapse, and but then I guess when we see things like the Texas, power failure, New Orleans with the Hurricane Katrina debacle, as much as I want to see things just blow up in the government's face, and I realize like there's actually like quite a lot at stake. There's a lot there, like if you screw up and if you work at the Target returns counter and you screw up returning someone's pair of pants for $25, like people don't die.
Right.
But when layer upon layer upon layer of government bureaucracy fails after like 50 years of ineptness, a lot of people die, and it's pretty awful.
Yeah, that's a healthy thing to remember that I have to remind myself of too, because I feel the same way. It's like, come on, collapse, crash, die. And, that's going to hurt a lot of people. So I've got a question for you. When I see the Democrats being stupid, it's just kind of normal. I mean, that's what I grew up with. I was a Republican and, lived in a conservative household. So when they did stupid things, or when they got caught lying, or they were, advocating expanding government or whatever, infringing on gun rights, like it doesn't, I don't get super riled up about it because I just expect the Democrats to suck. It's when they don't suck that I'm actually impressed. Where with the Republicans, since they're the party I come from, when they're being idiotic, when they're, increasing spending, when they're expanding government, it really grinds at me. And I really I can't say that I hate the Democrats because I just don't like them. And I've never had any real connection with them. Where the Republicans, like there was an intrinsic connection there growing up. And I was a registered Republican in my adult years for a little while. And seeing what they've turned into, it just makes my blood boil. I don't know if you've had the same reaction or what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I feel you. Let me think about this. I do have the same reaction, but I also have that balance with the fact that I know how some of them are just like incredibly evil.
Mm-hmm.
Because of like the war in the Middle East. And I know that it's a bipartisan effort. It really is. Democrats are involved in it too. But when I think about the comments that have come out of, Republican leaders' mouths about how people in the Middle East were monsters or dogs, we have to treat them that way, or, like the things that they say about women who've been raped. Some of the worst, most tone deaf and sensitive, gross comments usually come out of Republicans' mouths. So
Yep.
I'm never totally shocked and disappointed in the same way, I guess, as what you're describing, because I'm like, yeah, that's what I came from, and they're supposed to be about this or that, and then sometimes they are, but ultimately there's this kernel of evil in that party that the people who are good and say we've got to use the GOP for good, like they can't separate themselves from that. Some people say that they're blood-soaked monsters. Yeah. And so that's what I expect from blood-soaked monsters: bad behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, you said you were raised religious. I was too. I don't know if you're still religious. I'm not anymore. And there was a guy named Ravi Zacharias who just died about a year ago, I think. And he was someone that I looked up to growing up. And then recently, I think like a month ago, we found out that he's been part of this pervasive sex scandal for years throughout his life. And I hear what you're saying. Like you see so much hypocrisy from the Republicans anyway, that, you don't hold them to a higher standard necessarily. I think what it is more maybe is it just reminds me that I was part of that group, even though I wasn't advocating the horrible stuff they do, just that I was part of it. And I feel that it should represent something and it doesn't. Just like when that came out about Ravi Zacharias, even though I'm not a Christian anymore, it really it really ground at me. So I guess that's more my relationship with the Republican Party right now. Is it's not really that I ever thought they were great, because I grew up under George Bush. I didn't think he was great, and we saw who they kept nominating. They nominated John McCain and Mitt Romney. So it's not that I thought they were good. It's just I thought they were supposed to be good, I guess, and they just never are. And it's still something that sits with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're supposed to be better, even if they're not best or ideal, right? They're supposed to be better than the Democrats. That is what
right.
That still grinds my gears. I'm like, but you're a little better, right? And then it's like always disappointing and disgusting when you see, like the mask pulled off, and it's like, no, we're not better. Maybe we could be worse in a lot of ways, and that disgusts me and really bums me out. It's like feeling betrayed.
Yeah. So I didn't really get interested in the Libertarian Party until 2016, because coming out, I graduated high school in 2012, and I wasn't I missed the cutoff to vote for Ron Paul. I was a little too young. My birthday was in May when I turned 18, and obviously in New Hampshire, primary was in February. But then Rand Paul got me really excited, because there was an appetite in the Republican Party for the Ron Paul style conservative. And Rand Paul really looked like he was, picking up the torch where his dad left off. And he had a lot of momentum. Things were looking really good. And then it just collapsed. I mean, some of it was his fault. Some of it was Trump. I mean, there were a lot of variables, but either way, it just went nowhere. It was super depressing. He dropped out after Iowa. I didn't even get to vote for him in New Hampshire. And, I saw what the Republicans were happy with Trump and Ted Cruz. They were the front runners. And I was like, okay, this party really does not represent me anymore. Or, I don't know if the anymore is correct. This party doesn't represent me, and maybe it never did. Maybe I've just been pretending it did. So then I found out about Gary Johnson, and that was I don't know, maybe in May of 2016 or so, like early May. So I think the convention had already, whenever it was right after the convention had ended. So I didn't really see the race with Austin Peterson and John McAfee. It was after the nomination. And I was like, okay, it looks like, wow, we've got 12% in some polls. Like this could be a happening thing. So I was, constantly advertising stuff about him. And then, he was on the stage more and more, and he just was saying stupid stuff. I mean, he didn't know things. He had weird outbursts in interviews. And it was just really disappointing. The poll numbers just started going way down. And then I did vote for him, but, we ended up getting 3%. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm not really interested in this Libertarian Party thing. It seems like a joke. It seems like they don't want to win anything. They don't want to go anywhere. And so I kind of tabled everything. I figured, well, 8 years from now, we might get a Republican that's pretty good. And then actually I ended up supporting Tulsi Gabbard just because the Republicans are so bad and she was actually good on a bunch of things. So I was like, okay, I'll get involved in this. And holy crap, like just the 6 months working on that campaign, seeing how the Democrats treated her, and all the obstructions she faced, I realized like, wow, these two parties are just never going to let anyone good get anywhere. That's the goal. Like they're just not. So I reluctantly got back into the Libertarian Party. After she dropped out, I was looking at Jacob Hornberger and Justin Amash and everyone who was running. And I was like, okay, guys, let's do something this year. And then we did even worse this year. But I don't really have anywhere else to go. And This is the only vehicle that I see available to us. So my question to you is, what is your vision for the Libertarian Party? Are we an activist party to push the two other parties to be better? Or are we a force to win elections? Or what is your view of what the Libertarian Party should be if you become the chair?
Right now, I think that the Libertarian Party is positioned to be at the national level an activist messaging tool that will boost grassroots activism to win local elections. And as we've seen in blue states, it's really important to win your local elections and to be freedom oriented, because the local level is where we can kind of resist and fight back against tyrannical governors like Newsom and Whitmer. And I live in California, and it's like the counties that are a little bit more conservative and liberty minded. Those are the ones that have been withstanding all of the lockdowns and being a little bit more reasonable. It's so important. It's so important. People who are new to the party, they get really excited about presidential or federal elections. I was too when I was new to like the party politics. I ran for Congress twice. I was like, oh, this is exciting. This is so much fun. But now that I've been involved longer, I realize like the real fight needs to take place at the local level. And that's where you gain political capital anyway. Like you really do need to build from the ground up if you want to be able to win bigger elections. But we need to have solid principled messaging at the national level. We need to be unapologetic. We need to be really bold. It's sort of like how if you're in an interview and you speak in a really like monotone, clear, concise way, sometimes it can come across as actually kind of boring. You need to be like a little bit bombastic and loud and brash in order for your message to actually translate in an exciting way. And I do think that national needs to do that. And we just need to choose the people who represent us carefully so that we can toe that line between being loud and unapologetic, but also not so irreverent that we turn everyone off. It's an art form.
Yeah. National Libertarian Party is almost an oxymoron because you're trying to centralize your message with a group of individualist, anti-collectivist, anti-centralization advocates, so it's like trying to find people who can resonate with a bunch of people who think differently. I mean, it's really easy if you're trying to get someone to run for a state position somewhere, because you'll probably have one issue that's really important, and it probably varies from state to state. Like if it's California, it might be lifting the lockdowns. If it's Wyoming, it might be something about gun laws, or if it's New York City, it could be something about decriminalizing sex work. But trying to bring a consistent message that makes everyone happy on the national level seems like a really hard undertaking.
I think it's challenging, but I think it's doable if you put people with experience in, and there are experienced people in the libertarian community, more so than the Libertarian Party, which is why the Libertarian Party needs to be friendlier to libertarians. But I think speaking about the lockdowns at the national level is something that, sadly, the National Party completely dropped the ball on that over the last year. I have never been so shocked at such a gross failure. All but like 3 or 4 states in the whole country experienced some level of lockdown. I know Oklahoma didn't. Kristi Noem's state is South Dakota.
Yeah.
They didn't. Mississippi did not, I don't believe. My parents live in Mississippi, and I spoke with them all the time. I don't believe they had any state level lockdown. So that tells me that that's something we should be speaking out about, besides the fact that I don't know, the grossest infringement of liberty that we've encountered in like 100 years. I don't think that we've had anything this outrageous since wartime, like World War II. I would say the Vietnam draft was really bad, and the Patriot Act was really bad, but for crying out loud, we were still able to leave our homes, putting us on house arrest. I don't know how I can make it any clearer that the Libertarian Party is about being free, and then everyone is in some sort of quasi-prison state. We should be talking about this, and I'm extremely disappointed and kind of disgusted that we couldn't get it together at the national level. We sent out an email about it, finally, the first email in a year, discussing the year-long lockdown. And I was like, are we celebrating this, or what are we? I'm confused. This is the first time in a year. So what that tells me is we're 1 year behind in our messaging at the national level. That's how out of touch we are. Not a good place to be.
No, yeah. Why do you think that is? I hate Donald Trump, but the Libertarian Party to me has seemed like they have Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, but you can hate Trump without having Trump derangement syndrome. Trump derangement syndrome is when it's all encapsulating and it distracts you from other things that are going on and blinds you to the entire, the entire situation. You're just focusing on how much you hate Trump when other things that are much worse are going on. Is it just that people in the National Party, there were enough people that really had Trump derangement syndrome, or were they trying to message to anti-Trump voters, or why do you think there was such a dropped ball there?
Oh, the National Party is very busy chasing the culture. They chase mainstream culture, and regardless of whoever's in office, that's not what mainstream culture is. It's entertainment, academia, media, politics to a certain degree. So they don't want to hurt the feelings of the people on the left who are the loudest. So we kind of tiptoe around that and say, oh, we hate Donald Trump too. We hate him so much. We hate him so much that we'll talk about that, nonstop. And then we'll sort of forget to talk about the things that, our party was founded upon.
Right.
We shouldn't be chasing the culture. We need to be creating our own culture. We need to be counterculture. We should not be reflecting mainstream culture. That is not the purpose of our party. And that's what we've been doing. We're basically begging the people who are never going to like us to please like us, please pay attention to me. And it's embarrassing behavior. And when it's like when guys beg a really mean hot girl to pay attention to them, but she's not going to do that. She hates you. You're gross to her. So just ignore that person and go market to people who are going to be interested in you, right? Other libertarians. We can start by trying to be a little bit more welcoming to them.
Right.
It seems like low hanging fruit. And then people are like, oh no, we shouldn't be reaching out to Republicans. And I think, wait, did you hear yourself? Well, first of all, yes, we should. But second of all, like, do you really think that people who are libertarian equals Republicans? It's
Right.
like it's like the Libertarian Party doesn't know what it's about anymore, or they have this identity crisis. They're full of self-loathing, and they're embarrassed to be libertarians. But I'm not embarrassed to be a libertarian or to talk about liberty or oppose lockdowns. And I think we need to get the rest of the party back on track with that. And like, we need to be oriented towards freedom. Right now, we're just sort of chasing after likes of people who are, they're not going to vote for us.
Yeah. So I actually see, I could be wrong, but I feel like the lockdowns are going to be over everywhere by the end of this year. I mean, once Texas lifted its restrictions, Arizona and Missouri maybe both followed like yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
I see all the red states doing it within a couple months, and then I feel like the blue states will just follow suit. So that's a really easy enemy, the lockdowns, right, for libertarian, or it should be at least. So after that evaporates, what should the next target be?
It's going to really depend on what happens, but I imagine that the Democrats are going to try to pass aggressive gun control measures, and we need to be vigilant about that, and we need to be loud about it. We need to talk about federal power, and at the state level, we need to be talking about state power too, because our governors have way too much power, and that's something that the National Party can support us in discussing. Like, don't let the executive branch consolidate all of this power, because look at how it ruins your life. We need to be calling out Biden's war, definitely. And I think that we need to be mindful of the fact that Democrats may try to push some really bad financial policies. I would not be surprised if they start trying to go after UBI. They're trying to go after all of these, stimulus payments, and my heart goes out to everybody who was locked up in their homes, unable to work for the past year. And I understand people need money for that. For that reason, people are like, please, I'll take anything. The government shut me down. Why can't the government pay my bills? And I get what they're saying, but UBI and constant stimulus checks are not the answer.
Right.
So we need to be finessing that argument and making it appealing, but making it unapologetic. I think we got a lot ahead of us that we can be talking about. Sadly, I wish that I could say, oh, there's just one or two things and, everything will be all right. But, The list of government evils is never ending. It's very long.
Yeah, I feel that we have two problems. We have people who are not unapologetic, as you say, but then the people who are unapologetic are really bad message usually, and they tend to focus on, I would say, the wrong issues. I would say this about Jacob Hornberger. I was not impressed with how he went about his messaging, and I've done a couple of videos with Scott Horton and Dave Smith, and apparently there was stuff going on behind the scenes where they were trying to convince him of the same thing. But when you have lockdowns and you have these wars and you have all these giant corporate bailouts taking place, seems like those are more important things to focus on than food stamps or than, getting rid of the minimum wage or whatever. Like, even though I agree on those things, and especially like the minimum wage, I think trying to raise it right now is absolutely ridiculous. But I don't think it's a good hill to die on and to portray our messaging through. I think really going after the things that are actively destroying everybody's lives, and the people know it, that's a way we can connect with them. Because the way I became a libertarian was through realizing how much overlap I had with the Libertarian Party. It wasn't some guy coming and screaming Rothbard in my face when I didn't know anything about it. It was, oh wow, I really agree with that. I really agree with that. I want to check these guys out. So it seems that we should really focus on the issues that most Americans care about, instead of, focusing on things that they don't even know about. What do you think about that?
I tend to agree. I get very frequently people telling me the Libertarian Party really needs to speak out about seatbelt laws.
Seems like a priority.
Yeah, probably not. I think, I just don't think that's high on the list. But yeah, we tend to be a little bit tone deaf and a little bit, like obsessive on weird principled things. Yeah, I agree that seatbelt laws are I don't want to be ticketed when I'm committing a victimless crime. Far more concerned about being locked in my home or not being able to purchase a gun or ammunition.
Right.
And I really think that it's important that we have good messengers so that we're doing, the best job that we can. Another thing we need to be doing is polling of the issues. We need to do that. We need to do our own polling. We need to be paying attention to other polls that are done. We need to have somebody focused on that so that we are making sure our message is hitting home. Proper marketing department, that would be really helpful. That would be great. And we always get a ton of volunteers. We have people, I have a long list of people that I have to email back today and tomorrow who are interested in marketing in LA County. It's up to me to make sure that I get back in touch with them. I wish I had more people to help me with that, but ultimately, I got to be the one to do it. And at the national level, you want to tell me that we don't have a whole lot of an army of marketers who are willing to help? I know that we do, but we need to not be so hubristic that we reject their offers, and we need to be humble, right? And willing to take criticism for when we screw up and do bad messaging. And it happens, it happens in every organization, every business, that people are going to make mistakes. We just need to be willing to learn from our mistakes and put better people in positions so that we can do better in the future.
Yeah. So do you think that libertarians have a problem with hero worship just like the other parties do? I mean, it was annoying to me trying to get people to vote libertarian who were so hung up on Tulsi Gabbard or Andrew Yang or Bernie Sanders. It was almost like they didn't even really care about the issues. They cared about the person they had been supporting. And I'm seeing that in the Libertarian Party. There are people who are just completely magnetized to Justin Amash or Dave Smith or Ron Paul or whatever. And to me, it's guys, we can have inspirational leaders, but we've got to be better than the other parties and the other movements, because the entirety of our message is about self-governance. It's not about having a hero who's going to do everything for us. Do you think that's an issue, or what are your thoughts there?
I think it's probably an issue for some people, but I don't see that as an issue for the party as a whole. I think that it depends on what the outcome is. If there are people who are crazy about Ron Paul and really admire him, I'm one of them. And if it inspires you to do activism and to be like him and to work hard, that's great. But if you sit on your hands and say, we'll never be as good as Ron Paul's the hero, we can never do anything as good as him, so we might as well do nothing, that's a problem. If you're not willing to work with anyone who doesn't revere Ron Paul to the same level as you, that's a problem. The bigger problem I see in the Libertarian Party, not the movement, is hating someone because they do revere or appreciate another libertarian. Right. Oh, I hate that guy. You don't like him? Well, you're a literal fascist. Oh, you're a fascist. It's just because you didn't have it doesn't even make any sense to me. I don't understand the attitude that libertarians have where they hate someone because that person likes someone else.
Right.
I think that's the biggest problem. We really need to get over this micro tribalism that we've developed.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I've been a victim of that because I like Ron Paul. I've had people furious that I like Ron Paul. I've also had people furious that I liked Tulsi Gabbard. It doesn't matter. If you liked anyone, they're somehow putting the worst part of whoever that person is, whatever their perception of the worst part of that person was, they're putting it on you because you like them. And it's absolutely ridiculous. I've been listening to Dave Smith a lot lately, and he's talking about how we should not you touched on this earlier with the culture war. We should not embrace the right-wing culture war either, because there are a lot of people who are just revolting at how we sort of went after the left-wing culture war over the last year, and they think we need to embrace the right-wing culture war. And he's saying, no, we shouldn't do either, because just like we were more sympathetic toward the left when George Bush was president and the establishment was 100% right-wing, even a lot of the media was right-wing back then, as far as, supporting the wars and the Patriot Act and everything George Bush did. Once the left gained power, we totally realized, wow, they don't represent us either. And it seems like we're having amnesia, thinking that the right would somehow support our ideas too. Because, I watched some of CPAC. It was disturbing. And seeing the poll results for who they'd want to be the next president was also disturbing. Listening to the people who are revered on the right, I don't hear much liberty in what they're saying. So have you noticed that there is like the pushback seems to want to embrace the right more than just push for our own message?
Yeah. I get being anti-woke. I hate woke culture. I hate that every little thing that I'm going to do is going to be scrutinized to try to find some way to interpret it as racist or classist or transphobic. But
Right.
Being anti-woke isn't really the answer. You need to be awake. You need to be, and that's kind of what I consider being red-pilled. It's not being anti-democrat. It's just having your eyes open and being like, oh, I see this like awful culture war that's going on. I see this cultural crap that Democrats are pushing at me, and I'm just saying I'm not having it. It's not that I'm gonna like pushing the button to launch nukes, at Democrats. I'm just like, I'm opting out of that crap. I'm above it, and you're not gonna drag me down with it. And I think that's what the Libertarian Party needs to do. We need to be aware, like you're right, public schools, they're pushing some kind of gross agendas. They're pushing racism, they're pushing tribalism, they're trying to make it, like sound like a crime to be raised as a white person, and that's wrong. And it doesn't mean that I need to be consumed night and day with attacking Democrats and wearing shirts that say, like it's okay to be white and all lives matter. And I'm just like, you're right. Technically, yes, that's tone deaf messaging. So let's not do it. Like, just don't get dragged into playing in the mud, I guess.
Yeah.
We need to be better than that. We need to create our own culture. That's really what we should do as libertarians.
Yeah, like this thing with Mr. Potato Head, it's incredibly stupid to make an issue out of it, but the right, the response from the right is all about Mr. Potato Head. So they're not really rising above anything. They're just countering whatever the left does. Or like the example you gave with schools, like what they're teaching in schools, the right wants their own things in school. They want to get prayer back in school, Pledge of Allegiance, whatever. And libertarians really need to be like, hey, the Department of Education is the problem here. The centralized planning of trying to distribute regulations and, arbitrary rubrics for grading how kids do across 50 states. And, the funding that comes from the feds that determines what the schools are going to do. That is the issue. And then you kind of diffuse the stupidity of whatever the other two sides are arguing about.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like really dumb thing that people are fighting about Mr. Potato Head, and that they're trying to make Mr. Potato Head no longer a Mr. I heard that actually they're just going to release a gender neutral potato.
Right.
We can laugh about how stupid that is, but I just don't have enough hours in the day to devote like an all out war on Hasbro toys or whoever it is that releases Mr. Potato Head. I just got so many more important things to do in my life. When it comes to schools, like libertarians should be talking about how terrible public schools are in general. They're like prisons for children. I don't know about where you live, but in California, a lot of them have barbed wire at the top of the fences. They look like places where you put people who have murdered other people. It's not a good vibe. You can't just leave, leave to go to lunch. You can't give your child, like your junior high kid, a Tylenol or an Advil or an aspirin to take to school with them, like in case they have a headache or if a girl's on her period or something. That you get suspended for doing something like that. Like it's like a prison. So we've got a lot of stuff to unpack about schools. Some of the sex ed stuff is pretty gross, and yeah, I don't think we need to be giving sex ed to 8-year-olds. But what are the conservative answers to that? It's usually something that's almost as offensive, and it's just coming from a different political angle. That doesn't achieve freedom. Yeah, we should be oriented towards freedom in everything we do, not just owning the libtards. It doesn't educate anyone on the issues.
Yeah. So are you seeing a libertarian awakening in California with everything that's going on? I've been to all 50 states, most of them several times. And as far as geography goes, California wins in my book because you guys have everything. You've got Yosemite, the sequoias, the redwoods, Death Valley, you got beautiful mountains, beautiful ocean, coast. But the state just sucks. Like I would never want to live there just because of the government. And it seems like more and more people are realizing that, and they're leaving. Even they're going to other states because they've had enough. Are you seeing people just finally wake up and say, wow, maybe the issue is our governing system, because New York is the other state that has the closest system of governing that we do, and they suck just as bad as we do? Is that red pill finally being swallowed, or does it have a long way to go still, or both?
Oh, yeah. Oh, people have really woken up. People who are firmly, deeply entrenched in progressivism, they're just not going to wake up.
Right.
But people who are just like, centrist Democrats, or they just, they vote Democrat, but they don't care that much about politics during the year. If they're small business owners, or if their kids have been in public school and now they're forced, public schools have been closed. Like kids are having to do Zoom classes, and most of them find it to be a nightmare. Those people are really awake, and they hate Donald Trump. They're definitely not Republicans. So they are becoming much more libertarian. They're interested in the party, or they're becoming politically independent, which I also think is great. We're definitely seeing an awakening. I mean, the Recall Newsom campaign has over 1.5 million signatures. They're getting close to 2 million. That's a lot of people who have signed in the grip of the, terrifying pandemic, where people are afraid to leave their homes or get close to another stranger. People are still willing to walk up and sign on that clipboard. So You're definitely seeing a political shift in the People's Republic of California.
Well, that's good to hear. So are a lot of those people thinking about you said some of them hate Trump, so they're not really thinking about the Republicans, but I remember over the last couple of years, a lot of my classmates who had been liberals in high school, they were getting sick of the cancel culture and everything. So they were just going over to the Republican Party. And I was trying to tell them, like, no, don't do that. Like, you're going to be just as disappointed. It's just a different type of cancel culture. Do you think that there's a danger a lot of those people are just going to skip right over the Libertarian Party and go to the Republican Party? Or since California is a blue state, does the Libertarian Party have more of a draw to those people than the GOP would?
I think the Libertarian Party has more of a draw because a lot of them are just never going to vote Republican. The California LP, they've been very anti-lockdown, very, very supportive of that. We need to do more to appeal to the millions of people that live in our state. We just need to be more active. We're pretty darn active, but we really need to step it up. I'm on the California Executive Committee too, like for the Libertarian Party. And I wish that we had accomplished more during the lockdowns, but I will say that the counties who were very opposed to the lockdowns were really active. We have a lot of county level activity. But yeah, I think realistically what I see happening right now is that people are in the Democratic Party. They're going to sort of choose what they want to vote for. So they're going to vote for some Republicans, some Democrats, some Libertarians, some Independent. People are still sort of deciding like where they belong politically. They feel politically homeless right now.
Yeah. What do you think about the caucuses in the Libertarian Party. I know you're part of the Mises caucus, and I think debate is really good between different members of different caucuses and, really hammering out the ideas. But there's a difference between debate and, just like hateful snarling at each other and condemnation of, being statists or fascists. We kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, and I see so much of that. Do you think that that could go away anytime soon, or finally start to subside as we get more people, or is that just something intrinsic to a group of individualists who are trying to collectivize? Is it just always going to happen?
I think on a certain level, it's intrinsic. I am hopeful that we're going to see a lot of it go away if I'm elected as chair of the party in 2022. I appreciate that Joe Bishop Henchman doesn't engage in nasty fighting on social media either. Nick Sarwark did. And I think that created a huge problem. And we're still feeling the ramifications of it when you have a leader who thinks it's okay to snipe at people publicly and antagonize the members of his party. That's very poor leadership. And I think that a lot of people who are they represent the status quo of the Libertarian Party are very afraid right now that the Mises Caucus is going to ruin that for them. They are no longer going to enjoy feeling like they're in control of something and controlling all of the levers. They feel like power is slipping away from them. I don't think it's good to be married to power in the Libertarian Party. It's not a good thing. I hate the infighting. You won't see me engage in it very often. And I know that people comb through my social media and they look for any and every little thing they could find to discredit me, but you don't find a lot of fighting because I don't think that it's a good way to spend time. I'm extremely busy and I just don't have time to argue with fools who hate my guts on social media. And I think that it's good to lead by example. So I'm hopeful that fighting will diminish. I feel like it's sort of like it's in its death throes right now. So it's like really loud and noisy, but maybe it'll die. It'll die soon, to some degree.
Yeah, I'm actually a little hopeful as well because, I've only been a member of the Libertarian Party for almost a year now. And when I first joined, I couldn't really tell where the insults were coming from, but as I've been here for a while and you see who's really starting the division, it's a pretty small group of people who don't have a very big following. So I think you're right that it tends to be the people who are scared that they could become, normal sized fish in a big pond instead of a big fish in a small pond. So I hope you're right. And, people confuse. I've been really pushing unity among libertarians and, people who agree with libertarians on a lot, but I still will, I'll have disagreements with other people or I'll bring up controversial ideas and they'll get upset at me and they'll say, I thought you were about unity. And I say, yeah, I am. Like, I'm becoming an anarchist. Like I don't really believe in any form of government anymore. And I think it's interesting to debate that and talk with other people about that. But at the end of the day, I look at minarchists and people who want to decentralize the government as allies, not even allies, that we're in the same army even, we have the same immediate goals. So to me, unity is really realizing you're on the same team. It doesn't mean you all have to be in lockstep on every single issue and agree with each other all the time.
Right. I mean, I'm willing to work with people in other parties on issue coalitions. For crying out loud, if there was a communist group in LA that was opposing police spying, I work with them.
Right.
It doesn't. I don't like that. But this is not like an ideal world. You need to form alliances with people to achieve common goals. And for me, as long as you're oriented towards freedom in one, even if it's just in one issue, I'll work with you. And so obviously that would translate to people within the Libertarian Party. I just think it's bizarre when I see people say things like, oh, I'm not going to have any unity with that person. No unity. And I'm like, but you obviously do, because we're both members to the same organization. Like, this is absurd. People need to get their priorities in order. They're really busy like being keyboard warriors on the internet and screaming that everyone is a racist or not a real libertarian, that is not how you achieve freedom. I had to reschedule our interview because I got invited to speak suddenly with some people who really needed my help, because there were business owners who have been receiving not just like death threats from the public, but potential criminal charges for attempted murder because they've opened their restaurants in defiance of the lockdowns. So like my priority is dealing with that and helping those people, not responding to triggered like I'm a left libertarian types on the internet. Like I just have no time for that when we got people who are just like barely holding on to everything they got.
Yeah. So is this just a 2-person race by 2022, do you think, or can more people jump in, or what does the outlook of the race look like right now?
I expect that there will probably be 5 or 6 people in the race like there were last time, and there's going to be a handful of people who are absolute weirdos who don't get to the debate stage, and then you're going to find people with like kind of a, you know, low to mid-level support because they've been active in the party and they've got a good track record, but maybe they're jumping into the race late. I think that's what happens pretty much every time. And then you're going to have a couple of joke candidates, and you get all kinds of weirdos. But I expect that there will be a lot of competition, and I treat it as though there will be. I think whenever you're running for any sort of election, you should take it really seriously. So I do.
So what can people do to help you? I've got your Twitter page and your website linked in the description, so they can go check you out there. But what else can they do to help get your message out or support you or whatever?
Sure. I'm going to be visiting probably 7 states this year for 7 conventions that I've got planned so far. So if you're able to donate to my travel fund, I would really appreciate that. You can find Patreon and a PayPal link at angelamcardle.com. If you would like to volunteer for my campaign, I would really appreciate that too. I can use help on social media, transcribing podcasts like this, and helping me to meet more delegates so that I can attend online meetings for states I can't go to, understand the issues that your state is going through, and just any other information that you think I need. Running the party isn't just about, promoting myself. It's about meeting the needs of the delegates. So if you think that you've got information for me, like I would love to have that.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. And I'll just tell you, everything you said sounds really good to me. So as of right now, you have my support. I think what you're saying is exactly what the Libertarian Party has to do. I think we need bold but sensible messaging. I think we need to rise above the culture war. And I think we need to oppose the things that are really bad, and that we need to attack things at a local level instead of having this dream that we're just going to take the presidency and have a top-down revolution and save the world. And this really pissed me off last year. I had like 10 people who were running for Congress and Senate on my show. And it was when I was just getting the show going, so I didn't have that many views. I was getting like 40 or 50 views per video. And I had Brad Barron and Spike Cohen, like all these people on my show. And I was like, why are we putting so much stress on a presidential race that we know we can't win, where, we could, some of these guys that I had from state Senate races and state house races, like we could make a difference here. Why aren't we doing that? So I really agree with everything you said. And I hope that you are successful.
Thanks so much. And thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.
All right. We'll have to do it again.